Hey, this is John Reyes, and thanks for joining in on the Authority Marketing Blueprint. Sit back, relax, and grab your virtual seat because in this episode and every other episode, I'll be interviewing and collaborating with another high-level marketing and copywriting expert. If you haven't yet, go ahead and get some help along the way as we dish out and pinpoint some of the most profitable, powerful marketing and copywriting wisdom. Get some help with implementing everything you'll hear in this episode and other episodes by downloading my personal sales funnel swipe file stash at copyblueprints.com. Now, grab your virtual seat and listen in. Kendall Cherry is joining us today. Honestly, we actually connected on LinkedIn. We kind of just had a good conversation about copy and kind of just got to know each other. I kind of looked at her profile, not going to lie, and just saw that she was great at just a well-rounded copywriter, storytelling, the marketing, sales side, email copy, email marketing. So kind of just wanted to, we both had the mutual interest to speak, and thanks for joining us, Kendall.
Thank you. Well, I'm super excited to be here and getting to talk about all my favorite things, email, storytelling, and sales. That's like my trifecta.
Yeah, one of the reasons I thought it was interesting is because not to stereotype or to classify everyone in a certain bucket, but a lot of marketers, especially copywriters, who are very focused on the copy, the word, the conversion, big ideas, would rather not talk to that many people, would rather not do their own sales, or would rather just close everything through email. So, I mean, can you kind of give us a backstory, because your original background wasn't through business or copy, right?
No, not at all. So as far as how I help my clients now, I'm a ghostwriter and a copywriter. I tell people I'm basically your best rep dressed up as a writer. So I'm kind of towing the line between copywriting and selling for my clients. But I first kind of got into writing. I've been writing since I was a kid, which is probably true for most copywriters to some degree. But I a fluke of a first job out of college where I was 21 years old and ended up in the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company and was given way too much power and control at a very, very young age and a lot of influence for one of the senior vice presidents of the company I worked for, and was doing employee engagement, internal communications, and then eventually doing executive ghostwriting on behalf of this executive. And so I kind of saw in a very big corporate I'll say vessel, what ghostwriting, what selling ideas, what selling narratives looks like inside of a company, and got my master's in PR with an emphasis in executive communications and internal communication. So thinking at the time they were kind of grooming me to be VP of comms, and then I hated it. And so I knew, I had a really great salary. I had all the healthcare benefits and all the golden handcuffs that, we've all heard the same story before. But I knew I had to build an escape route for myself. So I tried to build basically some form of like coaching and consulting. I'd had a lot of people, I'd promoted extremely quickly. I think I had my first direct reports by the time I was 25. And so I was abnormally ahead of the kind of age that I was at the time. And so I'd had a lot of other people coming to me and asking, how can I promote like you are? Like, how are you influencing this much? Like, this is wild. And so I thought I was going to build just this like career coaching business that was helping people promote themselves, not knowing at the time I was just really good at sales. Know that because I didn't go to business school. And so built that business. Spoiler alert, failed at my first business, shocker. And I needed to make some money to like pay my bills. And so I thought, everyone on the internet my writing that I'm doing anyway, what would happen if I just started picking up a couple of clients to write for just to see like if I could do it. And so my first month as a copywriter, I closed like 12K in sales and in cash, which was like almost double what I was making in corporate. So I was like, what just happened? And then from there, it's just kind of evolved into what it is today, where I write mostly sales copy for clients. I'd say email newsletters, LinkedIn content, but then I do get the occasional like long form sales page. And I have one person on my wait list next year for me to start writing books, which are basically just long form lead magnets for high ticket offers. But I'm working on my own book first about B2B sales and sales skills for my I call them my wallflowers. I have my kind of brand insignia as a sunflower. I am secretly very introverted. Most people would not know that about me, but I'm very introverted. I'm a homebody. I don't enjoy big crowds. I had to overcome a lot of sales visibility and just like fear of, you know, coming across as like a used car salesman and all of that inner work in order to do what I believe is serving the world with what my gifts are. But I truly believe if you don't know how to sell, then you can't serve your people. So that's kind of what I write everywhere on the internet. That's what I do on behalf of my clients. And then all of my everything you see on the internet, if it's by Kendall Cherry, it's kind of that same ethos and general vibe.
That's a really interesting background. I mean, honestly, I'm the same way. Sometimes I can turn on for the camera and all stuff. I could be extroverted when it comes to work, but socially, I've grown to be more introverted. But the thing is, your background has been very well rounded from not just writing, but from a business perspective. So it kind of gave you that competitive advantage. And it's not easy to work at a high level when you're 25 years old, let alone manage people and manage different aspects of a business. So, 12K in sales your first month, that's probably, I would assume, maybe that's some of your marketing, leadership, sales background that really crossed over. But
yeah, to be honest, at the time it felt like a fluke because I had an extremely small audience. Like we're talking, my email list was probably 40 people. I was on Instagram. This was before a lot of the algorithm tweaks, but like, I mean, I probably had 500 followers, if that, and like 300 of them were my old friends, and I just kept my personal account and converted it to a business account. So I had a very, very small audience to be able to create that kind of content, but and the content that allowed to close those kinds of sales. But I think my kind of style of writing is a little bit different than other copywriters in that it's not just like quote unquote content. It's stories that are subliminally selling a product or a service on behalf of either myself or my clients. And most people, I hear the feedback a lot, either people come into my orbit, whichever way they do. And I hear all the time, they're like, when I see your content on LinkedIn, the words just leap off of the page. And that's very, very intentional. It's a very different writing style, I think, than a lot of clients that I've written for, but then even other copywriters that I've talked to. Because it's not the thing I tell my people is basically, you can write a story or you can write a piece of content, but if you get to the bottom and you have to say, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, like, was it really that effective? I don't think so. So I'm pro, like, you can subliminally sell, but every single post on the internet that I write selling, it's just not in your face. Like, I think a lot of the more traditional approaches to selling and content are, and the same is true for my email list as well.
because your sole focus isn't direct response copy, right? It's not like traditional, not necessarily traditional, but you do a variety, right? Because it's not the direct response, the sales page, the VSL, the long form, because you also integrate kind of the content marketing, kind of a little bit.
Yeah. So I do both. I get a lot of people that will actually hire me. I have a very, very high lifetime value of my customers over here because most people want the very integrated full ecosystem. So they want the sales assets, like the sales page or the VSL, to sound like them and to, be kind of bottom of the funnel copy. But then they also want that top and middle of the funnel copy that kind of brings someone into their orbit, but is not, 5 tricks for how to write better copy, which is like not really that effective at closing sales. So I get a lot of people that actually hire me to write top, middle, and bottom of the funnel copy. So I'm kind of writing the whole integrated piece. And then my philosophy is if you have great sales copy, you can repurpose it. So when I built my business over on Instagram, and then earlier this year I left and really down on LinkedIn, my business runs on about 8 months of a content library that we just run the playbook back every 8 months. Like I'm not writing any new content. It's the same content. Some of these posts have been around and emails have been around since about 2021. But it still resonates. I maybe do a little bit of like a tweak just to make sure, like with some of the messaging, and once I hear more, qualitative data from out in the field. But I mean, we're not really, using a bunch of new content all the time. So I think I have a very long-term approach to my business. This is not just like a freelancing gig for me. This is like a business that I've built to be able to support and create capital for some of my other goals, i.e. self-publishing books, and not just business books, but memoirs. I'm a memoirist on the side. And I kind of thought a little bit more like an investor as far as how I would build my business. And I think about even my content that I have, if I were going to list and evaluate my business and someone wanted to acquire it, I've got 8 months of content sitting and waiting to be able to run it back. So I think that's a little bit of a different mindset than other freelancers and copywriters, but it's just the way I've always thought of it, because I have no interest in going back to the corporate world. I love what I do. I love my clients. I'm making the kind of money that I want to, and more than enough to be able to even, self-fund my goals. And so that's really what's important to me. So I want kind of the path to least resistance to be able to create, not just achieve my goals, also, make my wildest dreams come true, which is all happening, which is really cool.
That's interesting, collective experience, because there's the combination of people listening who are writers, and then there's some who are like marketers, entrepreneurs. And honestly, it's hard to put the two together when you're managing it as a freelancer, because there's those two sides of the brain. The right side of the brain is very, creative, emotional. And, people who are writers, who are singers, who are even the physical stuff, there's dancers and all that stuff. It's very right brain, especially when you're doing it for a living. And there's the left side of the brain, which is analytical, organizational, and sometimes it's hard to switch between the two. But it's interesting to see how these can go together. There's people who are marketers, but they just don't want to write anymore, or there's people who are writers and they want to become more business oriented. But so you kind of mentioned, from what I gather, monetizing email lists, even very tiny email lists, has been one of your strong suits, right? Because there's some people out there who have 10, 20, 30,000 people on their email list and can't monetize it. But
yeah. So I'll share my metrics to proof point that you can have a tiny ass audience and have a very lucrative business. I've been in business a little over 3 years. I will probably cross 600 subscribers in the next week or two. I don't do any like ads. I don't publish anywhere else. It's all organic. I've never paid for an ad in the history of my business over 3 years. But we have 600 subscribers right now, and I'm about to close 600K in revenue, and that's cash. That's not just like sales, with other much bigger projects coming through. So I see it's so hard for me. Like I see it all the time on LinkedIn, these people with these really, really big email lists, and they're, trying to monetize. They're so worried about, low bid courses or, what have you. And that is a way to monetize an email list. It's a very, very different business model that I frankly my brain does not work like that. I'm kind of, again, simple, like stupidly simple, path of least resistance. Like the fastest way to close it is through email. And so that's kind of my, ideal way of doing it. There's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science to it, but I get a lot of people, like I just had this happen where a business owner who exited their business last year with 300 million in retail found me on LinkedIn, got on my email list because they wanted the services guide, just because they liked my content and it resonated and they liked the tone, and then converted in a week. And that's closed 33K and a one-off project. And then that'll create about 4K in recurring. And then they're on a wait list for a book next year, which is, upper echelons of the sales amount that it could be. So it's all through kind of a very, very strategic email welcome series. I only have 4 emails in there. And then I'm hella consistent. I have my Wallflower Fridays email newsletter. And then on Mondays, I usually post more of a, I'll call it's like more about selling you on the idea of sales copy and not just content writing. So my Friday email is a little bit more about like a story that's selling, and I kind of bring in inspiration from everywhere. And then Monday is more about just selling the idea that, sales copy is the way to do it. And then people just kind of stay in that engine. It runs like clockwork. I write that content fresh every week because I really enjoy it. But I just, like I said, I've closed that really huge deal, but then I've even had people who've been what I call longtime lurkers. They've been on my email list for 2.5 years, and my name's been on their list that they want to work with me, but either the timing wasn't right, or they didn't have the budget, or they were pivoting, or whatever. There's many reasons. Had a baby, so they come in when it's the right time for them, and that's really my I think it's part of the secret. I don't do any pitching. I don't do any cold outreach. It's very open. I basically hang an imaginary open for business sign, and I kind of tell you what it's like to work with me, my process, all of the things in my sales assets. Again, very introvert friendly. I don't have to get on a call. And then I get an inquiry form and I send a contract and a proposal. The only reason I'm even getting on a sales call is more of a scope check. Just make sure, that one, that I want to write for the client, especially if it's a larger proposal, and then just aligning on like what options they want. But I'm not doing any active or like manual selling. I'm basically doing a little bit of prospecting, and then the email ecosystem just kind of runs in the background for me. And I do watch and see who's clicking around on my services guide and who's opening, but I'm very, some people might call it lazy, like the bros might call it lazy, but I like to call it laissez-faire sales and marketing, which feels a lot better for me.
It's lazy versus smart. I mean,
Yeah.
when you,
Like I said, I just, I know how to attract the kind of people that I want. And I'm a writer. Like anytime I have to get on a call, or, all of the prospecting, if it takes too long, that's energy drain from like my revenue generating activity. So whatever I can do to offload as much of that social battery and like energy so that I can fund it back into my actual writing, my own writing or for my clients, like I'm going to do that every time. It's amazing. I'm never on calls. It's great.
because when you have the ability to, I guess, like when you know the strategy and to build your like the copy strategy, and then the aspect, the way to get clients through the door, and you can write, it gives you the ability to kind of be a one-man show in a way. Or
Mhm.
there's that aspect of where you can automate, there's when you can do these kinds of things, when you can automate client attraction, and then you don't need to go out manually. There's really badass email series that can do all the heavy lifting. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of content that can complement, you can transcribe your sales pitch and turn it into copy and all sorts of things. Then
Mhm.
that's kind of where that's kind of what sets entrepreneurs, I guess, aside from freelancers or copywriters, is the ability to create that freedom. There's some people who want got into writing because they just want to work 2-3 hours a day,
Mhm.
and just travel and live, do whatever. That was one of those people. And when you get good at doing it, you can work 2-3 hours a day and make a few $100,000 per year. But then
Mhm.
there's also that freedom of when I can do that. If I'm very driven, I like to work. Now I can make 7 figures. I can surpass 7 figures. It's you have that freedom. Or it's like, maybe you want to get to that level where I make 7 figures and barely work or something. It's hard. That's what the rest of the world would love to do. But it's that combination. It's always I think when it goes back to being able to write really well, you're always going to have a competitive edge against any
Mhm.
badass CEO in the world. Because even when you get to that level, but you're just such an amazing writer. I've seen some freelancers who started off as entrepreneurs who started off as copywriters, and they built their own 7-figure business, but they have maybe 4 team members, and they hire freelancers here and there, and they
Yeah.
barely work. And it always comes back to the fact that before they became entrepreneurs, or supplement marketers, agency owners, coaches, influencers, all sorts of things, is because a lot of them who got to that level really knew how to write really well. And it's like maybe whatever people's goals is. But yeah, it's hard to say lazy versus smart. As long as as long as our fulfillment is good, that's ultimately what service providers like you and I, or maybe some of the people listening, really care about. It's hard to call someone lazy when you deliver amazing work. Um,
Yeah. I
but
think as well it's a little bit as well about like the sales skills. I think at the end of the day, like you can be a great writer and it can sound amazing, but if it's not psychologically selling and emotionally selling, it's not going to be very effective. So I think it's a little bit of that. But I know part of my journey, it really took me about 2.5 years to even key into, oh, I'm selling, because I just didn't understand. No one explicitly says, hey, when this converts, this is why. And it's a different style of writing. That's just I don't know, people don't talk about like that is the actual function of what's going on there. So I have a lot of compassion for writers that struggle or marketers that struggle to sell their own skills, because a lot of the experience that I've had, especially, I mean, if you think about it, the ghostwriting industry up until recently, at least for me, what I've noticed is it's felt like a very hidden industry. You are under NDAs, you can't really share that you do ghostwrite. And if you do, you can't really share the content, and also have to kind of educate people about why ghostwriting is so important. And then you also have to sell yourself as a ghostwriter. So it's kind of this really kind of complicated, probably one of the more challenging things to sell, other than maybe, I think that COO work, like operations work and CFO work, is really challenging because you have left brain, right brain, and that's always a really strange dynamic. But it's actually really hard as a marketer. It's kind of like, let me sell you this idea that doesn't exist, and it's just kind of, it's floating around. I have to tell you about what it's going to do for you, but I have no deliverables because it's going to be custom, but I'm not going to build it for you until you pay me. So it's very, very like, you have to be very, very good at kind of painting the vision and understanding the pain points and the solutions and how you're going to sell that to someone. Because otherwise, I think that's the biggest thing that sets the people that can kind of come to the upper echelons of selling, is kind of understanding that is the inner workings of what's going on in that piece.
So how about has monetizing a small email list, has that been very powerful for you? Has that been, because to be honest, I mean, I've been in the industry for maybe a decade and work with a wide variety of copywriters and marketers and clients and combinations, masterminds and coaching, but I have not seen that many people who can really generate a good amount of leads and sales from such a tiny list. Has that been proven
That
to be
to
very
me,
powerful for you?
that to me, I'm so grateful to Kendall Cherry of the past, who decided one day that she would just really keep rocking with her email list of 20 people, because it has continued to serve me over time. And the thing that, I obviously, like, I'm a writer, I have a book coming, like I want more eyes to read my books, and there are ways to grow an email list. And I'm kind of my toes into that this coming year as I build that, different product out for the business. But the thing that I think about is, realistically, if I want to make the kind of money I want to make, it's not like I need to sell 200 units, right? Volume, I need highly qualified leads. So the 600 number, I mean, we have probably 50 to 100 of them on there have either been past clients or current clients, or, we've worked together in some very small capacity. But I mean, I have 500 people on that list right now that have never worked with. If I only need 6 clients a month, and I already have a roster kind of built up, it's not like I'm needing to close 15 new people every month, or 40 new people every month. I only need a few. And so the way I think of it is, again, path of least resistance. I want to make sure, if I decide to kind of keep ghostwriting for clients in some capacity, those clients will convert. It's just a matter of time. I have the proof points, and I know the style of content writing works and the sales content works. So to me, I always kind of play the long game here, where I'm like, okay, I mean, I basically just built a very lucrative engine for myself. I mean, we're currently recording this in the middle of August, and I'm booked through October, and we're now booking for November. So I have all of the control and the levers of, like, do I want to work that month, or how many clients do I want to take on? And my cash flow is now set up to where, we basically control even how much I'm working or not working, or if I have other projects or other things I'm navigating. So I always kind of take that approach, which I think, just from what I see on LinkedIn, a lot of people, I think, get so swept up in the vanity metrics of, I'm an email list with 20,000 subscribers. That used to be me. But to have an email list of 20,000 subscribers, I don't need 20,000 prospects. I need maybe 200 to last me for several years. So for a services-based business model, if you're into selling high ticket, I think I wish more people knew that you don't actually need this like massive email list. And I think there's a lot of people that get distracted. I think it's more important to focus on the smaller list and get really good at it, because most of the time, what I've experienced in trying to scale a business using the newsletter as the method close those clients or try out different offers, I kind of always go back to the thing I'm really freaking good at, which is writing copy and sales and marketing. So I always kind of come back to my main kind of bread and butter, for lack of a better word. And that is the thing that I can monetize the fastest and the most. Anytime I've ever been like, let's build a course, let's build passive income. That is, if you are not a product like management kind of brain, and that is not your bag, and your brain doesn't work like that, you don't, it's a very, very different style of CEO and business. I know I don't have a brain that works for that. Like if I were to ever do that and really go for it and build an education brand or passive income, like I literally would have to hire another brain that's very different than mine, because that is not my strength. And so I know my strength is as the CEO of this style of business, and it's why it does so well. But I think so many people think like they can just go rush off and they're going to monetize their 20K email list with their passive products. And I'm like, that is, I mean, that's, you're basically signing up for running a startup is the energetics of what that kind of business runs like. And it's a very, very, if you don't have the capital to do it and you don't have your salary covered and everything else, like it can become very, very nightmarish very quickly. And I've tried it and I'm like, again, it would need to be a very, very special type of working on a partnership. I don't know that it's the most lucrative as a solo entrepreneur, at least from my perspective and my own experimentation. I've tried it many times and I just, like I said, I love my little small list and my highly profitable service based, and it works for me and my goals and kind of what I want to do.
How about what has been one of your favorite services to provide, or maybe
Ooh,
like a favorite project that either is just you just love doing it, or was
yeah.
the most memorable, or was just a great
Yeah.
niche, or was a home run, or
Yeah, when I first became a copywriter, one of the offers that was kind of a fluke, to be honest, like it was something my coach and I just like threw together because I needed to like pay my credit card bill and so we needed to just throw something. At the time, it was this offer called Bio in a Box, which was, I would just write for, at the time, Instagram posts that were kind of like an intro or about kind of an origin story of whoever the client was. And I think I charged like $150 for it or something like that. And then when I hit my 3-year anniversary this year, I thought it would be fun to kind of bring it back because I recently left Instagram and I was back on LinkedIn and I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. And so we did Bio in a Box LinkedIn's version, which was basically just writing the about section on LinkedIn for people. This is like one of the key areas, like my biggest complaints on LinkedIn. I'm like, y'all, the LinkedIn section is not serving you with a lot of the ones that I see there. And so I kind of hacked how to write one in a way that converts without being so salesy. And so we relaunched it, just kind of, I mean, honestly, it was like, it would be a cash injection would be nice. Why not? Let's just see what happens. And we ended up selling it. I think it was $222 and I think we sold like 25 of them. And it was like, they were only on sale for a week. And I was brand new to LinkedIn and I was like, well, who are all these people? And like I like, where are y'all coming from? And it was like friends of friends were passing it on and the whole thing. So that was kind of a really fun, like kind of an ode to the past kind of thing, and kind of the rebel or the evolution and all the things as an entrepreneur. But it ended up being, I mean, now I still get people to ask if I'll write them for them. And so we have kind of a separate process and intake for them, just, for me to get to them every once in a while. But it was this like very poetic, why not just try to do a cash injection? Let's just see what happens. And then it was kind of a fluke launch. Like I think I wrote two posts and one email to sell it, and it sold that many. So, and again, small audience over here. My LinkedIn audience at the time was like 1,500, wasn't on email or it wasn't on Instagram, and I had an audience of probably like 560 at the time. So pretty wild conversion for that one as well. Unexpected for sure.
and it's interesting because I don't know. I don't know if that's still a term, a big fish in a small pond. I mean, LinkedIn is like
Oh yeah.
if you're a writer who's like dominating LinkedIn, you're one of the few because LinkedIn is a huge ocean of people who want content, who want marketing, who want to be
Yeah.
motivated. And there's not, for at least at the time of this recording, there's not too many, copywriters and related service providers in the copywriting world who are actually, dominating LinkedIn. So that's really interesting. Um, who are you primarily working with nowadays? So, if there was someone listening who would potentially be, ideal client or customer.
Yeah. So it's usually, I'll say some form of a B2B service provider is kind of my skill set. Usually either a solo owner or someone with a very small team. But it's usually people that want very, very similar to the sales ecosystem that I've talked about. And we kind of just meet. I meet you where you're at. So a lot of times people, when they fill out the inquiry form, it's set up in a way where I'm like, just tell me the tea, like what's going on here. What's working, what's not working. And then I kind of assess, here are the gaps in the sales ecosystem. I am working a project today actually with someone who is like, I have a big retreat that I need to sell. Like I literally have like cabins for a retreat that I have open spaces for, like we have to sell them. And so I looked at her content in about 5 seconds and I was like, oh, okay, got it. I know exactly why this is not selling. And so it's kind of doing a little bit of an initial audit and then getting people set up with that, again, that kind of ecosystem vibe. But it's mostly B2B service providers. I write for a lot of kind of coaches, so people with more of like a thought leadership lens, but they're selling a service on the other side of it. The last quarter, I had like an abnormally high number of marketing agencies or just digital marketers, which was kind of new for me. I think maybe because I was on LinkedIn a little bit more, but it's people that they either have an offer and it's not selling, or their content is just, again, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm going to exit box now. It's not actually selling what it is that they do. So I've had a lot of agency types and digital marketer types coming through. And then still the same kind of like CFO bookkeeper types, and trying to think if there's anyone, course create a little bit sometimes too, but usually it's someone that's more trying to sell a high ticket service similar to what I do, but in whatever their special sauce is, whatever they decide to set an offer up around.
Do you start like with consulting, or do you kind of just look over a project, or how does that work if someone wants to come to you and
Yeah. So there are only certain times when I'll do consulting, and it's if I do a newsletter setup for someone. And that's usually someone that either is pivoting their old newsletter, or I've had a couple that I've sold where it's they're basically starting from scratch. So it's like they don't even have the high level, who's your ideal reader? What does your content strategy look like? What's the flow for the newsletter look like? What are the topics? So before I'll write for anyone, like there has to be content strategy in place, and I won't do it. Like I will, like if you come to me, I will not write unless the content strategy is set. So I can do it for you. It's definitely a premium because it's not necessary. It is my zone of genius, but it's not necessarily far as getting to the specifics. So it's more of a premium, piece for me to do for people. But a lot of those clients that sign on for that, they like my take on email, and so they just want me to go ahead and build it. And then I don't really do much consulting. I will sometimes do, like if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, my offer's not selling, or I'm not sure, I won't do any like copy auditing, because that becomes just too messy. If someone is like, hey, I'm having a hard time with the positioning on my offer, I consult on that on the side. But I really try to stay in kind of peak writing energy as much as possible. It's like writing and selling are kind of my two areas, but I really only take most clients if I'm selling to them and they come to me. It's usually there's let's align on your positioning, and then I'll write something for you, because most of the time I find the execution of the copy, I can tell you all day how to sell it, and it like goes into one ear and then out the other because the deliverable still isn't fixed. And so that's really kind of where my magic is like, tell me what you want to sell, let me add some some sauce to it, and then like actually get you the deliverables that are going to become an asset that sells for you for the next quarter, years, however long.
cool. What about if someone just wants to, get on your list, consume some of your free content, or, just get a hold of you just to
Yeah.
talk to you directly? How can someone get in touch with you?
Yeah. Easiest way to find me is you can go to candidcollective.co/wallflower Fridays. that'll sign you up and you'll get my email welcome series. You'll see when I'm writing, again, it's only 4 emails. It's not this big crazy funnel. And then you'll get to see my other emails that I'm sending and kind of get to know more about me and my story and just my take on not just writing, but sales. And then most people, like, honestly, either fill out the inquiry form or you can just hit reply to any of the emails. I don't have an admin that's in my inbox. Like, I reply to every email that I get. So sometimes people will ask me like, hey, this thing's going on or whatever else. And I'm like trying to be a resource for people. So it's not uncommon for me to record a quick loom of like, hey, here's what I noticed, or ask me anything. Or if I can't, record a loom, I will work it into a future email, because I find I'm all about, like, it's the same philosophy, kind of like what you talked about with the selling, but I don't necessarily want to have to sit on 20 different calls with people. So if I get a question 2 times, I'm creating a loom asset, it's going in an FAQ, it's going to be in an email, to just really bottle up my best energy and just, disseminate it out into the world, essentially.
Awesome. Well, I think we learned a ton from you today, and I guarantee, if you're listening, you'll find Kendall probably dominating the game on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to reach out. Or yeah, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us. We enjoyed having you sit there right next to us in your virtual seat, and I hope the feeling was mutual. Don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to the Authority Marketing Podcast. And if you'd like, check out some other episodes we've got. Stay tuned for our next one.